15th of this month, President Zelensky wrote an article in the Sunday Times headed up, "With British help, we can ensure freedom defeats aggression. The UK has taken a lead in galvanizing Ukraine's allies against Russian tyranny at a critical moment for the free world." And he goes on to say that Ukraine has beaten the odds, turning the tide of the war and defending every inch of our land against the forces of oppression and tyranny with the support of the British people. The UK is one of the first countries to have guaranteed support to Ukraine with regard to NATO. Would the Noble Lord the Minister agree that when the time comes, we will support Ukraine's membership of NATO? And isn't it wonderful that President Putin has shot himself in the foot with Finland having joined NATO, Sweden about to join NATO, two formidable nations when it comes to capabilities, not only in armed forces, not only in the size of the army, but their capabilities in manufacturing, whether it comes to aerospace or armaments. I'm so proud that the moment Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine started, we in Britain helped straight away. I was president of the CBI at the time, the Confederation of British Industry. I contacted Ambassador Vadim Pristaiko on the Saturday, 2 days after the war started. I met him on the Monday, and on the 1st of March, I convened British industry, and from that day onwards, we started to help, sending millions of ration packs, medical kits, food packages, helping unblock the port of Odessa in due course for grain to flow. British business as a force for good. Oleksiy Goryenko, Ukrainian MP, has said that the Ukrainian forces have actually forced a significant withdrawal of Russian forces. He said we all concentrate on the land front lines with Russia, but actually a major win has taken place in terms of Russia's Black Sea fleet being pushed out of the northwestern Black Sea. And I think this is great news and cause for optimism. But, he says, Ukraine needs additional air defense systems to guard Ukrainian ports. Last year, many of us were in Westminster Hall when President Zelensky came and gave that inspirational speech and presented the helmet to the Speaker and the Lord Speaker and said, "Give us wings." But the United States, and this is Noble Lord Stirrup, Noble Gallant Lord, spoke about relying on America. The United States has to date provided $100 billion to Ukraine. The Noble Lord the Minister said in his excellent opening speech that we have provided £7 billion of military support. £7 billion, $100 billion. Germany provides a little bit more than we do. If America withdraws its support for Ukraine, that will be it. So we've got to make sure, as great allies of the United States, to ensure that that support from the United States, because without that, it will be disastrous. And despite urgent appeals, the United States has withheld the F-16 aircraft. And now we've just heard that Russia is going to reach 40% of all budget expenditure on defense and security. I mean, this is frightening. Ben Hodges, the former commanding officer of the United States Army in America, he has said that the F-16s are going to be provided to Ukraine this summer. Could the Noble Lord the Minister confirm that this is going to be the case? Because they are hugely outnumbered when it comes to air power on a 10-to-1 ratio by Russia, and they need that air power desperately. Today is India's Republic Day. Today there has been a huge parade in India with President Macron of France as the chief guest. That parade showcases India's armed forces. India's armed forces today total 1.4 million active personnel. India is the world's second largest military force, but more importantly, the world's largest voluntary army in the world. My late father, Lieutenant General Bilimoria, commanded the Central Indian Army, and as Commander-in-Chief of the Central Indian Army, he had 350,000 troops under his command. India's reserve forces alone are 1.155 million. And what do we hear in the UK today? Armed forces totaling a pathetic 184,860, half the size of my father's army, with reserves of 33,210. And soon the armed forces will be 72,000, not even enough to fill Wembley Stadium. And my friend General Sir Patrick Sanders, the Chief of General Staff, has said, if we're not careful, we are going to need to recruit conscripts in the future. Admiral Rob Bauer, Chairman of NATO's Military Committee, said just a few days ago that there is a potential for an all-out war with Russia in the next 20 years. At Harvard Business School, I remember attending a refresher course in January 2017 where Professor Ravi Abdullah put up a graph of globalization starting at the Battle of Waterloo when it was zero, going up in the beginning of 1900s when it peaked, and then the First World War, which should never have happened, then it dropped, and the Second World War it raised a bit, then it dropped again, and after 1945, that graph went up in 2017 January to the peak of the early 1900s, and he said, if history repeats itself, we will be having conflict in the world, and sadly how right he was with the Ukraine war 2 years ago. The sad situation in Gaza and Israel, the horrific attacks on the 7th of October, and the sad deaths and wounding of innocent people in the 3.5 months since. The Houthis, sponsored by Iran, in the Red Sea. Hezbollah, supported by Iran, in Lebanon. Pakistan and Iran attacking each other, let alone China and Taiwan and what might happen there. We are in a precarious position, with some people even warning of a World War III. So this is when this country should not be spending 2% of GDP on defence. It should not be spending 2.5% that the government talks about, promises but never does. We should be spending 3% of GDP on defence. Would the government acknowledge this? This is the time to be bold. As the Duke of Wellington says, fortune favours the bold. I conclude with this, and Lord Coker said this, the UK is already one of Ukraine's closest partners because we recognise that their security is our security. And that was said by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. And I conclude with this. President Zelensky, in that article, he concludes by saying, the UK has always defended freedom. For the sake of the world and our collective futures, it must continue to do so. If we can overcome such a danger to international order, then we will be able to convince even the most serious potential aggressors that war will be a loss for them as well. This is why we have to win. This is why we have to stand together. This is why our alliance matters.